Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, February 18th, 2026, and it's my birthday. And special prize for any of you who can guess how old I am. But thank you very much for joining me, and it's a great pleasure to be with you this week. Just back from 8 days in Jordan, meeting with our prospective students and our partners in the country to find out what's happening on the ground there and what the mood is among students and the questions that they have about visas. We'll talk about all of that in conjunction with some of the topics we're going to mention today, particularly number one. But today is a day like every other Wednesday when I'm back in the home office, where I can talk about the kinds of issues that are I've seen in the news. Certainly for those of you who are familiar with our newsletter, all the SMIE news that's fit to share, that comes out on Mondays. And between our LinkedIn version and the email version of the newsletter, you can subscribe to both via our website, smieconsulting.org/subscribe. I've just dropped the link to that in the chat, so you're welcome to go on and subscribe either way, either via LinkedIn or via email, whichever you choose. Certainly happy to have you a part of the conversation. That news story that appear in the newsletter on Monday mornings. There are 4 different topic areas we cover: social media news, big picture questions, solutions central, and a global roundup. And each of those is designed to really take a look at the kinds of topics. You know, we get so busy in our lives, in our work lives, and are trying to balance a home life, whatever that might look like for you. We oftentimes don't have time to process all the news that we're hearing about, bits and pieces. We see a post on the Facebook group for ISSS United. You might see a Globetrotters United post on recruitment, but there's all sorts of news coming at us. We really don't have a lot of time to process it all. So I started the newsletter about almost 8 years ago this summer. That really helps condense into a series of hot takes that I go out with the links to each story on Monday mornings. It's about a 5 to 10 minute read depending on the week and the busyness of the news. And then we take a look at those themes we see developing in the newsletter stories every week. And then on Wednesdays, we go next level. We give our in-depth analysis of what these news stories, what these topics generally mean, and how international admissions, international student recruitment, international advising, international programming people on campus can really respond to these stories and perhaps make recommendations on campus for potential changes to how you approach certain issues. All of that can be value that we get from the newsletter and the roundup here on Wednesdays. And I will say between the two newsletter sources, we are closing in on 2,900 subscribers on both the email and LinkedIn version. So please, thank you again from the bottom of my heart, and it's the best birthday present I could ask for to have so many international educators receiving that content weekly and making it a part of their regular international edification. So let's get right into our first question of the day, and that has to do with one of my favorite topics, and that's student engagement, particularly through the admissions funnel. And how are you doing that? And what's new? What's changing? What are the new survey data reveal from student perspectives in terms of what's most important to them, how quickly they want to respond, all of the kind of data that helps you go back to the leadership on campus and be able to say, hey, here's what students are currently saying about how well we're doing in terms of getting information to them, what's turning them on or off to the process of applying to our institutions. And that's something I wanted to share with you today in the first question. And that is, what does omnichannel engagement look like? And this is an important piece of the puzzle here, because omnichannel engagement means making sure you have multiple points of contact with your prospective student audiences across multiple platforms. And why is that important? Because As much as we like to think email is not dead, it is an important tool in how students will find out information in terms of submitting documents and data. If they're not doing that through an online portal, they're able to use email to communicate with us on our campuses, to find out details about their status. All of these kind of things are possible through omnichannel engagement. But back it up before that and think about the initial student prospect that you want to attract to your institution with the quality academics that you have, the quality campus life that you offer, the outcomes that you promise, all the kinds of things that attract a student to college campuses in the United States and frankly around the world. How you communicate that is of great value. And I've always said from the earliest days of social media, there are some general rules that all of us need to follow. And the first is live where your audience lives. And having a presence on the platforms where your students spend the majority of their time engaging in activities related to the higher ed search, the college search for finding that place that's going to be their home for the next 4 years as an undergrad, 2 years plus as a graduate student. All of this is a way of tying yourself, tuning into your students' environment. And that is so very valuable. And if you have a presence where they are and you're engaging with them on the platforms that they're using, that's great. That's a good first step. But engaging with them means you actually do need to respond. Not just put content out and not just respond to a post every so often if they like a picture or they sending them something in the mail after, or sending them something, sending a post if they've engaged with you in one way or another, sending them a private message, whatever that looks like. That's only part of the equation. What we're basing a lot of what we're going to discuss today is off a new Synorbis International Student Survey. And for those of you who don't know Synorbis is out of Australia. They started initially as a platform for universities to engage with students in China in particular by having a locally hosted website and having content available on a verified WhatsApp account, or not a WhatsApp, WeChat account to reach students where they are in China, because they don't typically use the Western social media, and certainly it's prohibited unless you can get over the Great Firewall. So what Synorbis has done, I've known Nicholas Chu since the pandemic, and he and I have been in regular communication over the years, and I really admire a lot of what his company's been doing. Haven't yet been at an institution where we've been able to afford all the different tools that they offer, but what they do offer is an omni-channel approach through messaging platforms. And we've talked regularly on the Roundup here about how important messaging platforms are, rather than the one-to-many opportunities we all had when Facebook, YouTube, all the other major platforms came out. Nowadays, messaging tools are the way you should be communicating with individual students. Yes, you can send the same general message and tweak it to a variety of students, but having messaging tool options available to identify with individual students, that's expected these days. What's also expected is timely responses. And what does that mean? Why is that important? Well, let's see. One of the key numbers that jumps off the page from me at this stage is that even for students who have decided to apply to universities, 33% of international students abandon an application because of communication issues alone, according to the Synorbis survey. This drop-off, in the Pioneer News article, it quotes this drop-off is rarely caused by a lack of interest of information about an institution, a lack of interest or information about an institution. It is driven by how slow, fragmented, and difficult university communication can feel from the perspective of the student. So this is something that really should hit you where it hurts, because applicants you've already won that battle to get them to apply, are falling off. A third of them are falling off because you're not communicating effectively with them. because you're not engaging with them in a timely manner, in a well thought out manner, in a situationally appropriate message. So instead of, I've got a question about my applications, getting sent a form letter or form message about here's the steps to apply, that's not answering their questions. That's leaving them feeling unheard and leaving you with a bad reputation in that student's eyes. Additional things that came out of the survey, that student expectations are changing rapidly. That nearly 70%, I guess from the Pi News article, nearly 70% of students expect a response within a couple of days. Yet more than a third report waiting a week or longer to hear back. It's clear, this is the last quote from this article, it's clear that the gap with the reality versus those expectations is widening. So this is something that I really think we want to say we're doing a good job, and we know it's a very challenging time to meet students where they are and to be on top of all these communications. But it just goes, the survey results certainly go to show just how important responsiveness is to international students going through the application process. That if you're not on top of it, you are really putting yourself and your institution behind in the overall success rates you're going to have with the students you're trying to bring to your campus. And the yield really doesn't really ever capture that, but the student surveys certainly give us a reason. We don't know usually why students fall off of interest before they get to the visa process or before they decide, yes, I want to come. We don't really always know that because when we do surveys out, we get abysmal kind of return response rates on those, and that's by design because they're done with this because we didn't meet their needs. So an ICEF Monitor report on this same survey does go a little bit deeper into some of the broader analysis that we should be taking note of in this, and that's we must have quick and meaningful engagement with students across a widening field of channels. And this is basically what this means is we have to have effective workflows and systems that can manage communications with prospects at scale. That's one of the things that the Synorbis survey results are kind of a prelude to their release of this new engagement platform that does cover majority of the major messaging platforms that are available to prospective students that we can and should be utilizing as we reach out to our intended audiences. So this ICEF Monitor report, very helpful in terms of providing the kind of content we need to really address and adjust how we communicate. I'll give you a case in point. We're doing a project with Platy, a company I got to know a few years ago based out of Brazil, where they're very adept at social media marketing in interest generation campaigns for institutions, for different projects or events and times like that. What we're working with them on is we're targeting two particular countries, Vietnam and Indonesia. Ahead of travel there to one of those two countries, is that they've done the social. They're in the process of starting up a social campaign. They're launching that. They're having landing pages for students to find out about us. They're going to be redirecting students to and getting them signed up for an online portal that we have, an online community that we've set up. That's kind of a way to connect current students with future students. There is something with that platform that after they fill out that initial inquiry, they're followed up with through an AI calling agent, and that's meeting them where they are and doing that within minutes of them filling out that survey form, expressing interest in the university. These AI agents will call the students, will WhatsApp message or Zalo talk the students based on their mobile numbers. That there will be an engagement attempts, 2 or 3 or 4 attempts to reach that student to get them to answer a few more questions that help qualify them a little bit further as a lead as a lead for the university. Once they have those qualified, we are putting them in touch in those two countries with an on the ground team member from InUni, our global recruitment partner, that will then reach out to them. AI will get this initial information from the student via this AI calling interaction, and then set up a meeting time in that student's time zone with our on-the-ground person from our partner in Uni in Indonesia and Vietnam. That person will then be having meetings scheduled with these prospective students to go through their interest, and then qualifying them even further, getting them in touch with someone who can walk them through the admissions process, who can counsel them through that process, and then get the application into the pipeline. So this is a way we are meeting students where they are. They've expressed interest. They're on these social platforms, on particularly Instagram in both of these countries. So we're using that platform to reach them, to generate the interest. Then we're having an AI agent call them to qualify them and find out who's really interested, who's a good fit, and then having meetings scheduled, and then reminders sent. WhatsApp messages sent as the meeting's about to start, so that they do go to that account, rather than sending them an email and say accept this email to go to this meeting. Those will all be done via WhatsApp, via Zello Talk. These are the tools that the students are using, and these are the tools that we're going to use to reach them, to facilitate a relationship, to cultivate interest, to get them to apply and get them into the pipeline, so that then we can then engage with them on our online platform that we've created with our current students, and to getting them to ask questions there to the group, providing content for them of our current students so that they can interact and see their video testimonials to find out more about what's going on at the University of Akron. So these are these two articles here that focus on this Synorbis point are really some of the most impactful, I think, in terms of directional changes, and that we all need to be engaging in as we look at ways to improve how we recruit. It's a heavy lift, but we know we couldn't do it all on our own. That's why we're investing in the partners that we're investing in, to try and provide a case study for why this needs to be how we approach students who are applying from or interested from all over the world. So we're not quite there yet to cover the whole world with this. It's but we are hoping this year is our way to either make the case for why we need the investment we need to continue to improve the way we do, and the way we can interact with students on a more regular and a more in-depth basis. And as the Synorbis survey indicates, and the ISEF Monitor piece shows, our workflows need to be better. We need to have systems in place to manage this increase and the diversity of channels that they might be communicating from. So very, very important piece of content data that really helps support some of what the decisions we're making. So I'm really kind of happy to be talking about that. But next up, our next question of the day is 2026 the year to re-engage with China? All right. So as we do like to do at SMIE Consulting, is we have this series of 6 principles that we started and developed during the pandemic. Those 6 principles were featured in a book chapter I wrote for Star Scholars back in 2024. And the first P in that 6 Ps are principles of how strategic international enrollment marketing management can and should be done. Planning for that should be done. And that's perspective. And we talk about perspective a lot because it's the thing we have least opportunity to do when we're so head down and focused on the challenges and issues we're facing on our campuses with our students in our country. And that's the stepping back and looking at the bigger picture is something I think we really need to be doing more of, and all the time. That's why we can do the newsletter. That's why we do the roundup, so that we can hopefully provide some of that perspective for you. Now, why 2026 is potentially a new year? We have a lot going on. If you in geopolitics and everything, there's many different challenges that this administration is trying to take very different tacks on in terms of their approach to Europe, their approach to engagement with other partners. Everything seems to be more functioning on, we're going to have good relations if we can have a good trade deal. That seems to be baseline of how this administration changes tack in relations with any particular countries. The trade deals that were signed with Europe earlier in the year, in Southeast Asia and East Asia with Vietnam, with Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, and Korea, with the recent deal showing up in India with Modi, with his agreement not to buy Putin's oil, and what that means for relationships between India and China. We've been saying regularly, follow the trade deals. That's where you're going to see improvements in visa situations, and we saw that in Vietnam, in Korea, in Japan, in Malaysia, Indonesia, and I think we're starting to see that. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever you need to do in India. We have already 4 students with visa appointments, 3 undergrad, 1 grad, from India for visa appointments beginning for the fall, beginning this next week, and then throughout the first couple of weeks of March. That's encouraging because we all know how bad it got last fall. Visa appointments weren't readily available. The consulate and embassies in India were saying, no, we're not giving special preference to students this year. We have to figure out how we're going to do this social media vetting and what that looks like for what the added workload is on our visa officers, consular officers that do the appointments. We talked about how that month-long pause from end of May to June, how that impacted the busiest season of the year for visas, where 75% of visa applications, visa interviews happen between May and August. Those May, June, July, August, those 4 months are 75% of visa applications for the year. And we knew that pause in May, June, and the social media vetting was causing all sorts of implementation issues, none more so than in India, the largest single source of international students in the U.S. at this point. And we had basically a drip of appointments, a gaming of the system by certain rogue agents that were using fake profiles and fake passports to book appointments, and then them getting found out and removed and all of those things. So we didn't have an ambassador in India from the U.S. until just end of December, I think it was. So there was really some operational challenges in that country. I was there in September. I shared with you how we heard from public diplomacy folks that said they're deprioritizing students this year, that they were giving priority to visitor visas and business visas applicants. That challenge, and I said, what's it going to take, a trade deal with Modi to turn things around here? And she kind of gave me a nod, and not that she wasn't going to say anything officially. She couldn't, obviously, but that is what it's now looking like is going to be the case. We've seen a change now. We are seeing appointments now become available. I'll be going to India in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to Vietnam and India for some recruitment initiatives with our partner, and we'll see what's happening on the ground. So we're starting to see the needle move. But with regard to China, we had a good year last year with new applicants to getting visas from China, largely due to some established programs we had with partners to bring students here on 3+2 programs to do finishing their final year of a bachelor's degree and the first year of a 2-year master's program. So is this going to be the year when we can all re-engage? Well, certainly some of us can't. And when I say some, I'm talking specifically about certainly institutional partnerships are really off the table for a lot of public institutions in Texas and in Florida. Recruitment of Chinese students is not forbidden, but Florida's already told its public institution you can't give Chinese students graduate assistantships, which seems a little bit discriminatory. But if that's the case, then that cuts out a whole market for them, having to rely on undergrad kids who come on full fund on their own funding. You've seen one university in Indiana, Purdue, basically some of its faculty revolting and saying, no, we're not going to admit Chinese students anymore because of fears of espionage and them stealing technology due to their work with different research projects. So export control offices are certainly getting the work out when it comes to China and any kind of new new proposals for research. But certainly, we've had some challenges in Ohio. Our state Senate passed a bill, SB1, last year, and signed by the governor, that required all new partnerships to be vetted and signed off on by the chancellor's office, and that puts a lot of pressure on individual institutions to make sure that they've done their due diligence before that gets submitted. And we made the decision that we had a change in personnel and didn't have anybody in that could slip right in to handle that export control role. In terms of engagement, we're beginning to put those pieces together. So, and particularly for China, that's something that is not an optional thing anymore. It's always export control is always a due diligence thing that institutions have to do. But with China, there's extra circumspection we need to do with regard to any partnerships we do, any research projects we're engaged with there. So this is something that is, for us in Ohio, it's a little bit more challenging. Not impossible, but we did have a program that we were about to sign for last summer, get the kibosh put on it when the Senate bill passed. Ministry of Tourism in China sent out an announcement: we won't be able to pursue this program with you because the Chinese ministry put out this statement saying, well, we need to avoid Ohio. It's a little bit not safe. We can't guarantee all that. And it was political. It was just a tit for tat thing. But things seem to be warming up, that there are opportunities for re-engagement. And when it comes to T&E, when it comes to educating students here in the U.S. and recruiting more of them directly, those opportunities may be expanding dramatically in the next year. And our friends at Sunrise, another company very active in China, been on the ground for a number of years there, and they mentioned, they have their article titled "The Quiet Thaw: Why 2026 is a Year for U.S. Universities to Return to China for Both Recruitment and Engagement." So why? Do they see reading the tea leaves coming in to this year? We've heard Trump talk about it a number of times. He's going to China in April, and later in the year, President Xi will be coming to the U.S. So the fact that these summits are actually happening is a good thing. And neither side would want to have these if they didn't see positive results coming out in a re-engagement politically, social, economic trade. On the U.S., I've heard someone saying in a podcast yesterday that China is no longer seen by the U.S. government as a military threat, but more as strategic competition economically and in terms of technological developments. So all of this are positive signs, I think, that China and the U.S. are still they have to coexist, and they might as well get along better than have themselves as constant bitter enemies on the brink of war. And I think China's learned some lessons in terms of U.S. engagement in Gaza, in what they did with Iran's nuclear program, what's about to happen with potential deal or military action there with Iran after the protests and the deaths that have been attributed to the government and other terrorist groups inside Iran. So there's a lot going on, and China, I think, doesn't want to be confrontational. And I don't think, certainly publicly, certainly privately, they may have those that have some reservations, but the reality is that I think China is on the verge of much more positive re-engagement. And I think the president seems to have that in him as well to really take up a much more positive tone with Xi, and potentially again open the doors to future cooperation on a number of different levels, and including educational. So we'll keep everybody posted on that. Now, last question of the day. Can Canada return to greatness in international education? I don't know how much in the U.S. we really appreciate what happened in Canada before 2024. There was a point when Canada, and they count their students, they have two big areas of focus for international education in Canada. They have their public and private colleges, which are more vocational education focused. And in the U.S., we don't really emphasize that internationally at all. The numbers are well under 100,000 for students coming to the U.S. on vocational degrees. But in Canada, in 2024, there were over 1 million international students in Canada. And we were sitting at about 1.2, 1.3 million at that point. So our northern neighbors, who have 150 universities, 300 universities, 100 universities and 300 public-private colleges, were enrolling almost as many international students as we were. Boggles the mind. How did that happen? They had relied, and we anyone who's followed the Roundup and our newsletter for a number of years, read the tea leaves, it was easy to see Canada is a country with declining birth rates, low population growth, and saw immigrants coming for work and students coming for education, then work, and then eventual pathways to residency, really choosing Canada as a friendlier version of the U.S. politically. And this is going back to probably Trump administration 2016, 2020. And during that time, the numbers started to take off. And in particular from India, you would see huge numbers of Indians coming into Canada, seeing it as a pathway to work and residency, taking up the opportunity to go to Canada at all costs. There were a number of fraudulent agents that were bringing students from Punjab from India in Punjab to Canada, and then basically selling a false bill of goods, and then them basically leaving them hanging without really the support that they needed once they got to Canada. A lot of times, these public-private partnerships, there was a lot of financial reasons why that these private colleges partnered with these public colleges to attract international students under the guidance of these public reputable colleges around the country. And then these private colleges are where these students would enroll, ended up being 90% international, 90% Indian, and really the quality was terrible, and then they all just fell off. After that, you would have huge housing crises in Vancouver, in Toronto and other major cities, but also in some of the smaller Atlantic provinces where they don't have purpose-built housing, and certainly enough purpose-built housing in the community, let alone on the campus, which most colleges don't have volumes to accommodate the numbers of new international students that were coming in. So Canada, we know in 2024 they imposed for the first time a cap on new study permits that would be issued for that year. We saw numbers begin to tank in 2024, 2025, and again, we're seeing the results of that this year. In that 2-year cycle between 24 and 25, we saw 300,000 fewer international students come to Canada. So that's shocking. The numbers, I should say, come to Canada, the overall numbers dropped from about 1 million to around 700,000. So that's devastating. And 2026, 27, there's still more caps coming. And that number will not increase of new international students. Now, one thing, the positive thing, they're trying to remake themselves in terms of international education. They've changed the way, instead of just open doors to anyone at any level and any program, they have gotten very specific and limited the kinds of programs that international students can come and do that will lead to residency. They can come and do anything, but the ones that can actually lead to work and residency are very limited. So most of the students that would have come previously for that work pathway are now having to change their academic programs or give up on Canada as an option if they don't have the academic chops to make it into the kinds of programs that are in demand. One thing in terms of these new caps that are being put in place for 2026 and 2027, what is not included in these caps are master's candidates. And this is a potential game changer in terms of opening a door for Canada to regain a pipeline of students and maybe the Indian students that used to be coming to the U.S. for master's programs are now going to look at, I don't know if they will, but that's a potential option for those Canadians, for those Indians that used to come for vocational programs with a potential path to work and residency. Now having that closed on them, they're seeing, well, maybe I already do have a bachelor's or even have a master's degree. Maybe I go for one that Canada needs if I have the right matching qualifications, and that's going to be my future. So we'll see if that actually happens. But I certainly think in the articles that we were sharing with you now from ICEF Monitor and from a couple other sources, you're going to see how they're really struggling to retain that global talent that they've had been bringing in record numbers up until 2024. So we'll see if they're able to get over the hump or out of the doldrums rather than get over the hump. Get out of that real crater that they put themselves in, or the government has put themselves in. So we'll see what happens, but there's a long road back. And that there's some of the data that's come out of Canada in terms of how the situation number-wise that they had is just remarkable. So that's all we have for you this week on the Midweek Roundup. Thanks for joining us, and look forward to chatting with you next time. We will be back February 25th for our last roundup of the month, and